Clause elements in sentences. Understanding the purpose of groups of words in a sentence. Levels of text in English. There are several levels of grammar in any given text. The complete text, down to the paragraph, down to the clause, and then phrase and word class. Word class level is parts of speech such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions. Phrase level is a group of two or more words that does not have both a subject and a verb. Clause level is the highest level of sentence construction. Clauses have both a subject and a verb combination. Clause level. Clause level will help you learn how English sentences are constructed to avoid verb, comma, and word order mistakes. It will also help you take a step back and see your own sentences from a greater distance as simple groups of words. Ultimately, knowledge about how these groups are structured will help you achieve greater language flow. Note, to vary sentence length, it is possible to have more than one clause in a complete sentence. The most important clause elements include the subject, the verb, the direct object, the indirect object, the adverbial, and the complement. The complement includes the subject complement and the object complement. Clause elements, subject, then verb. The most typical clause order is subject before verb in most sentences in English. Note the examples of sentence structure below where you see the subject first, then the verb. Remember also that we're discussing clause level, which is the purpose of groups of words in a sentence. Note, adverbials can, however, appear anywhere in a sentence, often as introductory phrases. For example, unfortunately, comma, I lost my keys. So here you see an example with an adverbial first. But the most important thing to note in the examples above is subject first, then verb. The subject of a clause. The subject is a noun phrase, a pronoun, and it is the main topic of the sentence. The best way to find the subject of a sentence, that is a group of words, is to test what you think is the subject by replacing the words with the personal pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, you, or they. Pronoun, I am happy. They are jealous. Noun, Karen was sick. Fred felt funny. Note how you can replace the subjects Karen and Fred with a personal pronoun she and he. Noun phrase. Mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. The noun phrase can be replaced with the personal pronoun they go. Note, if we were to test this and only replace mad dogs with they, we can see that we do not have the whole subject. They and Englishmen go out in the midday sun does not really make sense. However, if we replace mad dogs and Englishmen by expanding the subject with the personal pronoun they, the sentence makes sense. They go out in the midday sun. The subject of a clause. The subject controls subject-verb agreement, also called concord. This is one of the main reasons why it is important. For example, they were, Karen was, mad dogs and Englishmen were. Particularly when you have long subjects, it's important to maintain control of your verbs. Subjects also help us choose the correct reflexive pronoun. I injured myself. Karen hurt herself. Mad dogs and Englishmen amused themselves. Finally, a subject is usually present in a clause, but may be omitted in imperatives. For example, listen to this. In this example, you is implied as a subject. Note, we can vary sentence length by making simple sentences more complex or by putting two sentences together. In other words, it is possible to have more than one subject and verb in a sentence. Note the example where we put two simple sentences together, two clauses together, They were feeling fine, comma, but Karen was sick. So we have two clauses with two subjects and two verbs in this sentence. The verb of a clause. This is the central and necessary element. A clause must contain at least one verb phrase, which may be a single verb or more. Example, Jesus wept. 2 verbs, they are drowning. 3 verbs, the cow has been trying to jump over the moon. The choice of verb will largely determine what other elements are in the clause. The verb always has a subject. Note, so-called phrasal verbs often have a more formal alternative. See examples of this in the PDF. The object of a clause can be indirect or direct and answers the question who or what. Examples of direct object: Fred bit his thumb. Test it. What did he bite? His thumb. The chimpanzees groomed each other. Who did they groom? Each other. They love trying to beat each other. Test. What do they love? Trying to beat each other. They have been trying to beat each other. What have they been trying? To beat each other. Indirect object. Jane gave the gorilla a kiss. Note, Jane gave a kiss, but the gorilla was the recipient of that kiss. So the gorilla is the indirect object. I promised him a present. What I promised him was a present, so that's the direct object, but he is the recipient of that present and therefore the indirect object. The adverbials of a clause. These clause elements add to or complete the meaning of verbs, adverbials, or complements. They may be single adverbs, but they can also include nouns, phrases, and subordinate clauses. Adverbials often answer where, when, why, or how. Examples: they ran quickly answers how they ran. He goes to the bathroom twice nightly answers how often or when. We walked on the playground answers where. My friend phoned me this morning answers when. I was happy because she loved me answers why. And notice how these adverbials are represented by different word classes. Adverbials are often linking words. The bus was full. However, Fred found a seat. Unfortunately, he left me. Furthermore, English is important in everyday life. Quite frankly, we disapprove of violence. So notice this introductory adverbial, then the subject we, then disapprove of the verb, and then violence is the direct object. And finally, the complements of a clause. Complements are clauses that tell us something about the subject or the object. The subject complement usually follows the verb. The most common verb for a subject complement is the verb to be, or verbs that are similar: to become, to get, to remain. Other examples are perception and sensory verbs like feel, seem, taste, smell, appear, or look. Complements can both seem like nouns to describe the subject, but also like adjectives. In the examples below, the complements are in italics and the verbs underlined. She is a doctor. That smells heavenly. The students are feeling dazed and confused. She is Catholic and she looks tired. Note how the first subject complement is a noun phrase. The next one is, it looks like an adverb, but it's actually it acts as an adjective. And then dazed and confused act as adjectives, pointing back to the students. She is Catholic. Catholic, it points back to she. And tired is an adjective that points back to she as well. So all of these subject complements point back to the subject, and they are not direct objects. And finally, as mentioned, complements are clauses that tell us something about the subject or the object. Object complements usually follow the direct object and act like an adjective or a description. For example, sunshine makes me very happy. When you test the verb to make, what does it make? It makes me, so that's the direct object. But then very happy describes me again, so it's an object complement. The voters elected, who did they elect? So Clinton is the direct object, but Then you have President of the United States of America, which is the object complement, which points back to Clinton. The most important thing to tell you about the clause elements that you've learned now is subject and verb, knowing the difference, knowing when you have the complete subject, especially when we work with word order, when we have commas that we need to make sure that we don't have any comma mistakes, and finally, this subject-verb agreement, getting your verbs right. I hope this tutorial has helped, and if you have any questions, let me know.